Gabriel, welcome to the interview. Can you start by introducing yourself?
My name is Gabriel Gonzalez Asensio. I'm from Salvadoran descent, but I'm born and raised in Laval, technically. I studied at a French primary and high school, and then I went to Dawson in CEGEP, and now I'm here in McGill studying physics in my third year.
Can you describe how the physics major is built?
Because I lived there and did CEGEP, I've skipped U0, but normally you do U0 where you do a lot of the introductory classes, so Cal 1, Cal 2, physics and mechanics, waves, light, stuff like that. Every science student needs to do U0, so you're going to share classes with like chem majors, bio majors, and stuff like that. So you might have to do chem classes as well. Once you get into your first year, that's when you start with all the actual physics classes. You start doing a lot of math to build your bases up. You start pushing what you learned in U0 using the new math that you learned. And that's basically a pattern in the whole major where basically you're going to advance your math capabilities and then push the physics that you learned beforehand with the new math that you learned.
Can you name one thing you like and one thing you dislike about your major?
So it's kind of two sides of the same coin because it's really challenging, but it's also really rewarding once you actually understand what you're doing. I'd say one thing I like though is how interconnected I feel like a lot of the things are. So you'll learn one thing in one class and somehow, some way, it'll show up again in another class. It just feels like, everything is connected.
What does your homework look like, usually?
We get weekly homeworks per class. So this can get kind of heavy, especially if you're taking 5 courses, which is why I personally am taking 4 courses per semester. Especially because I did 5 courses per semester for one whole year, and I didn't like the fact that it felt very heavy at times. I felt like a robot, like I had to churn out 5 assignments basically per week. I felt like I wasn't really taking the time to understand what I was doing and more so just, writing answers on a piece of paper, trying to find the answers as quickly as I could. So usually it's 1 assignment per week per class. Assignments vary. Usually I would say they can tend to be between 3 to 5 questions per assignment. But those, don't get too confident because those take hours and you'll usually end up working in teams to solve them. Even though they're submitted individually, even the profs, they recommend you use any resource you can. Office hours are very helpful for this also. Just finding a good study group, very essential I found it to be very essential in surviving the degree.
Can you give a piece of advice to a prospective student in your major?
Piece of advice, I'd say definitely get involved. We have some good clubs. Not just relating to physics, but also there's a lot of intersectionality between physics and engineering clubs. So just join clubs, talk to people. We have the physics lounge in Rutherford building. That's also really good to just meet people, do homework there, talk to the higher level students. Usually they're very helpful when you ask them questions, and they'll try to give you advice when they can. They'll be like, oh, this prof is good, this prof is bad. Sometimes they'll help you if you have any questions, Other than that, finding a good study group, very essential. I found that if I tried to do my classes completely alone, luckily I've never had to because I lucked out and found a good study group my first semester. And then because it's a small major, you'll see a lot of the same students in your classes throughout your degree. Once you find a good study group, usually you'll stick around with them for the majority of your degree, and it's been essential. If I tried to do these classes alone, it would be impossible.
Do you have any idea what you're going to do after this degree? Maybe do a master's, work, anything? So
it's kind of funny because I don't see myself continuing in physics pure after my degree, and that's not because I didn't like my degree. Actually, the reason I'm sticking with my bachelor's and not switching out completely is because I've enjoyed it so much. But initially, going into my bachelor's, I definitely expected myself to stay within academia, pursue a master's, PhD, maybe a postdoc, and then become a professor potentially. But then, I didn't feel like it. So I plan on pursuing a master's in some type of engineering.
Do you find it hard to balance school and your social life?
Depends. It depends. It depends on the time in the semester. Mm-hmm. Obviously for midterms and finals, it's you gotta lock in for school. Other than that, yes and no, because I found that with a good study group, they just become your friend group, and so you kind of see them a lot. I don't know, example for me with my study group, we'll do assignments, and then once we finish, we kind of just go out to drink, or we'll just do stuff together.
That's cool.
But outside of the people you see at school, my other social circles, again, yes and no. That depends how you define balancing. But for me, I feel like I've been doing a good job of balancing both. Like, so like I'll still be going to classes and doing my assignments on time and still have time to like go to meet up with my friends or go to a few parties and here and there. But it's definitely not like my social life takes over school. It's definitely that school is still a priority and you still have to manage that. So it definitely depends what type of student you are.
Balance is key.
Balance is key. Balance is very key. One piece of advice I would say for sure: take care of your mental health. Don't just focus on school too much, because it can kind of be it can weigh very heavily on you if you put all your efforts into school and then you get hit with a bad grade. Because sometimes it'll just happen. Like, this is not just for physics; just general student life in general at McGill, especially because McGill is a hard school. Is to take care of your mental health. Like for me, I take care of my mental health I like to go out and see my friends. And also I have days where I just, stay home and relax, and I'll block out that day to like, I've already done my homework, or like I'll do my homework the next day, you know what I mean? Because if you don't have that and you constantly put pressure on yourself, that's going to weigh on your mental health, and you're going to see your performance is going to dwindle, and it's just not going to be at full capacity.
Why did you choose this program, and why did you choose McGill?
So I chose this program because initially I wanted to go into research in physics specifically. Like in high school, I found myself very enamored with the field of physics, and then that just kept growing as I did CJEP and saw more classes and delved deeper into the concepts. Outside of school, I've always been interested in physics and like looked at like outside resources. So like a lot of videos I watch on YouTube would be related to physics or math, or just a lot of questions I'll ask generally. Like, I've always been a curious person, so it makes sense that I go into a field that asks a lot of questions and tries to find the answers to all of them. Obviously, my goals switched. Like, I wanted to go into research beforehand. Now I want to go more like industrial. But that doesn't mean I still don't love what I'm doing. At the end of the day, I just very much like physics at its core, because to me, it's like a bunch of puzzles that we're solving, and I like solving puzzles. Now, for McGill specifically, that's kind of an easy answer. That's just because I live here, and McGill is a top school not only in Canada but in the world for like pure science subject majors. So like physics, chemistry, bio, all the research stuff. It's fantastic. Our profs have been top notch, especially in their own fields. Very knowledgeable. I haven't had that many bad profs. Maybe like one or two. I've just found it to be a really good school for just learning. You know what I mean? McGill really pushes you though. I'll give you an example, like my classical mechanics 2 class, we found, like with my friends, we found out the prof took her notes from MIT's classical mechanics 3 class. So that's the level of like, sometimes they'll push you even further. I know that for some other degrees in STEM, a lot of the classes we take in undergrad would be considered graduate level in other unis. That's just what you can expect out of McGill. It will push you.
Was it hard for you to adjust to university life and your classes?
I'd say no, but only because I have the privilege of having gone to CJEP. And because CJEP, especially Dawson, I feel like prepared me very well for uni. Just like as an example, like the way my schedule was outlined in Dawson is very similar to a way schedule is outlined in McGill. So like, let's say other universities, for example, will have 3 hours a week per class, but in a 3-hour block. Versus McGill, they'll like to separate it into 2 blocks of like an hour 30, right? And so Dawson was very, very similar in that aspect. I just felt very prepared because of CJEP. Now, if I had gone from high school to uni, especially McGill straight, that would have been a completely different scenario, completely different answer. Uni/McGill life has been it takes like a semester or 2 to get used to it, but I feel like once you get into it, you get into the rhythm of it. Everything just falls into place, and it's just like after your first year, it's very similar to your first year, but just like keeps progressively getting a bit harder and harder.
If you can describe it, how is the overall vibe in your classes?
I found that the overall vibe has been very, I want to say, accommodating. Now, I don't know if I just got lucky and it was like with the people I did my degree with, that they were friendly. I want to say that everybody is friendly in the degree. Obviously, you have a few bad apples here and there, it doesn't matter. But in general, I do think that it is a very welcoming environment. People who are in physics because they like it. There's not really like a monetary reason or just another reason besides I like physics, so I'm doing this. So it's just a bunch of nerds in a class, in a good way.
Passionate nerds.
Passionate nerds. I wouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people I found are just eager to get to know each other and definitely talk about like physics and talk about other stuff, other hobbies that they might have. Definitely don't be afraid to ask questions. I've found profs that are very welcoming of any questions you might ask. And usually, if you have a question, somebody else in the class has the same question. They just don't want to ask it. I found that a lot of times when people ask questions, even if it's stuff I didn't think about to ask, I've always been like, oh yeah, that is a good question. You know what I mean? So don't be afraid to ask questions. Yeah.
Well, that's it for the interview. Thank you so much, Gabriel.